Okay, all right, we're going to talk about Nicholas Roerich. And a lot of people probably don't know who he is, but he is a very important person that reveals another part of this mystery of the Archons through his books. Now, who is Nicholas Roerich? Nicholas Roerich was a famous German-Russian painter, writer, archaeologist, theosophist, and philosopher, and a public figure. He was born in Russia. His father was German, his mother was Russian. And he was born in 1874, and he died in 1947 in India. Like Helen Blavatsky, he was also interested in many things spiritual. Now, his father was a well-to-do notary public, and he also became a lawyer, but he was able to travel and paint. And he went to Paris after he married his wife and studied under some tutors and became a very good painter. He's well known for his paintings of the Himalayas because he traveled over there. But what he is also well known for is Agni Yoga, which I'm going to talk about in a bit. Now, Agni Yoga is a spiritual practice, and his wife, Helen, and Nicholas created it. And they said it was given to them by one of the gurus of Helen Blavatsky that they happened to come upon, Moria. Now, what is going to be very interesting as we get into it is that he reveals that all of these yogic practices come from the Nagas. And I'm going to get into that when I read from his book, Heart of Asia. But that's incredibly important because he has now linked the serpent race, which is what they are, underground serpent race, to yoga, and he links it to Buddhism, and we know Hinduism talks about them quite a bit. The Nagas. And if you recall, Buddha was protected by a Naga, and we'll talk about that in a bit as well. So, what else did Nicholas Roerich do? Well, he was very famous for something known as the Roerich Pact, which was signed into law in the United States and most nations of the Pan-American Union in April of 1935. And it was a pact that sought to protect cultural objects from protect them from destruction during wartime. And people agreed with him, and he had a symbol which was 3 dots within a circle. And that symbol is still around today. And basically, he was able to help protect art and cultural objects. Now, by the way, the name of that symbol that I just discussed is called the Pax Cultura Emblem. And as I said, it's still around today, and you'll see it on Agni Yoga sites as well. Now, Agni Yoga, like I said, was a spiritual teaching taught by Nicholas Roerich and his wife, Helena Roerich. And the followers of Agni Yoga believe that the teaching was given to the Roerich family by Master Moria, as I said. Now, what else did Nicholas Roerich do? Well, he traveled all over the East. The West is, considered the Western nations, Europe and America, and the East is considered like India and Tibet and other parts of Asia. But he, like I said, he was multiply, talented, artist and philosopher and lawyer, and but he wrote many, many books. And one of the books that I want to read from is called Heart of Asia, Memoirs from the Himalayas. And in that, he talks about going to Shambhala and some of the things that he learned. Okay, let's go to page 130 of his Heart of Asia, Memoirs from the Himalayas book. He says, now let us summarize these scattered indications about Shambhala. The teaching of Shambhala is a true teaching of life, as in Hindu yogas. This teaching indicates the use of the finest energies which fill the macrocosm and which are as powerfully manifested in our microcosm. Therefore, are the Asaras and Kuthampas related to Shambhala? Yes. And the great Mahatmas and Rishas? Yes. And the warriors of Rigdan Yapo? Yes. And the whole cycle of Gazer Khan? Yes. And of course, Kalachakra? Yes. And Ira Varsha, from where the Kalki avatar is expected? Yes. And Agarte, with its subterranean cities? Yes. And Mingsti, and the great Yarktes, and the great dwellers of Mongolia, and the inhabitants of Kalapa, and the White Island, and the Grail, Lapis Exilis, and the Belovodi, and the Altai, and Chud, the subterranean people, and the underground passages of Turfan, and the hidden cities of Churchan, and the submerged Kitash, and the suburban of Khotan, and the White Mountain, and the sacred valley of Buddha's initiation, and Agni Yoga, and Dijong, and the book of Wate Shan, and the Tashi Lamas, and the place of the three secrets, and the White Burkhan. Yes, yes, yes. All these have assembled round the great name of Shambhala in the conception of many nations and many ages. There is also the whole mass of isolated facts and indications, deeply felt in spirit, even if not explicit. Esoteric Buddhism penetrated into Tibet in the 7th century AD, but esoteric Buddhists had their strongholds there already before our era, on the slopes of Kalay and the northern Punjab, possibly in the environs of Kulu. Although science regards Atisha as the propagator of this doctrine, the essential teaching of Shambhala existed, of course, much earlier, its origin hidden in the centuries. Shambhala, or the White Island, is indicated as being to the west of Himavat. One must respect the caution with which the approximate locality of this remarkable sanctuary is divulged. Bante Yul and Dejang are also synonymous with the White Island. To the north of Kalay, towards Kunlun and Churchen, was the so-called Ayurvarsha, from where the Kalki avatar is expected. The place of the three secrets, the valley of the initiation of Buddha. These indications lead the consciousness of the people in the same direction, beyond the right ranges of the Himalayas. Shambhala itself is the holy place, where the earthly world links with the highest states of consciousness. In the East, they know that there exist two Shambhalas, an earthy one and an invisible one. Many speculations have been made about the location of earthly Shambhala. Certain indications put this place in the extreme north, explaining that the rays of the aurora borealis are the rays of the invisible Shambhala. This attribution to the north is easily understood in Tibet. The ancient name of Shambhala is Chang Shambhala, and this means northern Shambhala. The origin of this name is explained as follows. The teaching was originally manifested in India, where everything emanating from beyond the Himalayas is naturally north. North of Benares is a village, Shambhala, connected with the legend of Maitreya. Hence it is apparent why the trans-Himalayan Shambhala is called Northern Shambhala. Several indications, blended in symbols, place Shambhala in the Pamirs in Turkestan or in the central Gobi. Wesley, in his Jesuit travels in Central Asia, refers to the Jesuit Casella who died in 1650 in Shigatse. The proposal was made to Casella, who enjoyed the most intimate relations with Tibetans, to visit the land of Shambhala. The many misconceptions about the geological locations of Shambhala have natural reasons. In all books on Shambhala, as well as in all narrated legends about it, its location is described in highly symbolic language, almost indecipherable to the uninitiate. Take, for instance, the translation by Professor Grunwedel of The Path to Shambhala, the famous book written by the third Tashi Lama. One is overwhelmed by the number of geographical indications, so blended and mixed that only great knowledge of old Buddhist places and of local names can assist in disentangling its complicated web. You will easily understand why such a veil was needed. One of the Mahatmas was asked why they hide their ashrams so carefully. The Mahatma answered, "Otherwise an endless procession from west and east, north and south, would overflow our remote places where now, without permission, nobody may disturb our studies." And it is really so. Here in the turmoil of the city, it is hard to imagine how many people are searching for the teaching of the Mahatmas. A learned Lama, whose name is known in the West, told us about the numberless inquiries and letters he was receiving from France, England, America, asking his advice on how to come into contact with the Mahatmas and how to receive their teaching, reality, and their loftiest attainments once more come together. Okay, I'm going to stop for a minute. Now he goes on and talks a little bit more about some of the teachings, and I want to get to this part about where things, what he, come from in regards to his Agni Yoga. Go to page 134. Agni Yoga, in full coordinates with the latest problems of science, points the way for research into the elements and the subtlest energies. What only recently was commonly known as the teaching of willpower and concentration has now been evolved by Agni Yoga into a system of mastering the energies which surround us. Through an expansion of consciousness and a training of spirit and body, without isolating ourselves from the conditions of the present day, the synthetic yoga builds a happy future for humanity. End quote. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit, page 135. Referring in most practical formula to all different sides of life, Agni Yoga reveals to us how near the elements are, and the most all-penetrating them, fire. Agni Yoga separates reality from Maya. Agni Yoga revolts against wonders, bringing phenomena and manifestations into the realm of positive knowledge. One must learn the organization of psychic energy, Agni Yoga affirms. This yoga affirms boldly, let us be sincere and discard all prejudices and superstitions that are not fitting to the conscious man who wishes to investigate and to acquire knowledge scientifically. End quote. Okay, I want to get to this part. We're going to skip ahead to page 139. Quote, thus, the traveler of life is blessed by Agni Yoga, given in the valley of Brahmaputra, which takes its beginning from the lake of the great Nagas, guarding the covenants of the Rig Vedas. Human beings have remained too long at a low material level. They must hurry to seize the brilliant possibilities long since predestined. One is amazed to remember that in 1878, Edison's phonograph was denounced by the Académie Française as the trick of a charlatan. We can still remember how the first motor cars were proclaimed impractical, how electric light was considered dangerous for the eyes and telephones bad for the ear. It is with reluctance such as this that mankind gets accustomed to new concepts. Prejudice permeates the foundation of society, end quote. I'm going to stop. What did he just say? Agni Yoga was given in the valley of the Brahmaputra, and that takes its beginning from the lake of the great Nagas and the guarding the covenants of the Rig Vedas. The Nagas are the serpent beings. Interesting that he used the term covenants, because in the opposite of this religion, Hinduism and Buddhism, you look at Christianity, and that has two covenants. The old covenant, which is what the Jews can't seem to get off of, was the cult of Cronus, involving animal sacrifices. And the new covenant, which involved ending that and a new way with the teachings of Jesus Christ, who told you, I'm the last sacrifice, quit sacrificing, eat the bread and the wine, honor your father. So, and the Muslims, went off on their own into this cave of Hira and created their own cult, which I will get into at a later time. I don't find anything redeeming about it as well, especially when they teach to lie and cut people's heads off and on and on. But the Christians have the sun as their symbol, and the Muslims have the moon. It's the sun and the moon, and I'm going to talk about that, how they're going to be pitted against each other in a later video. But what I'm trying to get at here is all of these religions come from these Nagas, these serpent beings, and I'm going to continue to prove that out. We just exposed yoga and Hinduism, and as I said, Buddha was protected by a Naga. He's shown oftentimes with the seven-headed cobra. Those are your reptilian serpent people. And this Shambhala talks about subterranean cities. So there you are, hidden in the mountains. They're remote. They're hard to get to. Just like out and it's out. Some say the old Shambhala was in the Gobi Desert. So here again, you have a desert situation, which is home to reptiles. Just like in America, you have out in the Southwest, in Nevada and New Mexico and Arizona, some of these strange underground bases out in the desert and remote, and they don't want people coming out there. So here again, really, humanity is not coming up with this stuff on their own, and it is being guided. Interesting, he talks about attaining some powers through the manipulation of energy. Well, that's magic. That is the heart of magic, and that's going to be my next video. I'm going to talk about the Golden Dawn and some of these magical orders and what they're doing and how they're making magic happen. But it's all power of the will, visualization. At a certain point, they start asking entities to help them for certain things, which is basically like a prayer, in a Catholic church, asking for help, same thing. But these people are a little bit more, the magicians are a little bit more serious about how they're going to obtain that power. One other thing I want to mention is the burial place of Jesus is talked about. So hang on, let me get to that page. Before I get into the burial place of Jesus, I want to point out on page 17 in The Heart of Asia, Memoirs from the Himalayas, Roerich wrote this, quote, "On the border of Lahul in the rocks, there are two carved images of a man and a woman about 9 feet high. The same legend is told about them as about the gigantic images of Bayman of Afghanistan, that their height corresponds to that of the original inhabitants of this place." End quote. 9 feet tall giants. So here's the story of the giants in Lahul. Now, for those of you that don't know about the tomb of Jesus, it's supposed to be in Kashmir, and it's called Rosabal, and it's kept real quiet, and the Muslims have control over it. But people have known about this for a long time, especially in Asia. They used to call him Saint Isa. And on page 18, this is what Roerich wrote. He wrote, in Srinagar, we first encountered the curious legend about Christ's visit to this place. Afterwards, we saw how widely spread in India, in Ladakh, and in Central Asia was the legend of the visit of Christ to these parts during the long absence mentioned in the Gospels. The Muslims of Srinagar told us that the crucified Christ, or as they call him, Isa, did not die on the cross, but only lost consciousness. The disciples took away his body, secreted it, and cured him. Later, Isa was taken to Srinagar, where he taught the people, and there he died. The tomb of the teacher is in the basement of a private house. It is said that an inscription there states that the son of Joseph was buried in that house. Near the tomb, miraculous cures are said to take place, and fragrant aromas fill the air. In this way, the people of the other religions desire to have Christ among them. End quote. And I apologize if I didn't pronounce that Srinagar correctly. I've never, been there, but I've heard about this place. Now, I want to also go to page 23. It says, in Leh, we again encountered the legend of Christ's visit to these parts. The Hindu postmaster of Leh and several Ladakhi Buddhists told us that in Leh, not far from the bazaar, there still exists a pond, near which stood an old tree. Under this tree, before his departure to Palestine, Christ preached to the people. We also heard another legend of how Christ, when young, arrived in India with a merchant's caravan, and how he continued to study the higher wisdom in the Himalayas. We heard several visions of the legend, which has spread widely throughout Ladakh, Xinjiang, and Mongolia. But all versions agree on one point, that during the time of his absence, Christ was in India and Asia. It does not matter how and from where the legend originated. Perhaps it is of Nestorian origin. It is valuable to see that the legend is told and completely with complete sincerity. End quote. So this is something they keep from you as well. And there are tombs of the apostles all over India and Europe. And I find it interesting that no one in Hollywood or the news media actually does a documentary on any of this. You could go there today. There's videos out on the internet that talk about the tomb of Thomas in India. And he looks either Semitic or European, depending on your opinion. It's not an Indian. And various tombs all throughout Europe. And they used to sell parts of the saints and the apostles and disciples as relics for curing. So you can't deny Christ existed. He existed. There is no denial. You can these buffoons are saying that, oh, Christ, it's just a made-up lie, blah, blah, blah. You're wrong. In fact, it's being hidden as to who he really was and where he went. I personally think he was pharaonic. I think he may have had some powers that the average person doesn't have. He was all over in this area learning things. And this book says he didn't really fully die. He passed out and they revived him. And he was, from the Bible, I guess he was only up on that cross for 3 hours. And there was something about they took the sword on the side, and I think the blood still ran out, but that shouldn't have been if he was dead. That's something to really look into more. And I'm, for you Christians out there, why aren't you on this? Why aren't you on this? And, to me, it's just another form of control and to keep you in your quiet place, in your box, and not connect all of these cultures and get to the heart of it, which are these serpent races. The serpent people, this Nagas, who are in the dark and pulling the strings and controlling certain areas and introducing certain philosophies and causing problems, causing these problems on this planet and using us as farm animals and mine workers and such. So this has to be exposed and discussed. So for now, that gives you a good feel of who this Nicholas Roerich is. And as I said, they still have Agni Yoga centers in America. And I'll show you a couple of websites. Also, that Agni is the god of fire. Now, this is an interesting one. And there's two gods of fire in Greek mythology. Prometheus, I call him Satan. Others will say Cronus is Satan, but I call Prometheus Set. And the other one would be Hephaestus, who was working the blacksmith area and the forge. But if you look at the pictures, the Hindu representation of Agni, he's shown with two people on a ram, I guess, and that symbolizes duality, which is Prometheus or Satan, the Baphomet, all of that. So there's a lot of this fire symbolism with a lot of this yoga and Hinduism and Buddhism, whereas the Christianity is more of the water symbol, baptized, the cleansing, the purification. The water was more of Zeus and the pharaohs, and fire is more of these Prometheans. And the Indians even created a rocket, and they named it an Agni, a rocket. I'll show you that. But so you get in the picture. Again, my mythological unification theory, it's all the same. They just, every culture has their names, their take on it, their variation. And it all goes down to these underground serpent races, the Nagas, the Reptoids, the angels, the gods, the demons, whatever you want to call them. This is where it comes from. Now, the question is, were they just ancient white people that used the serpent as their symbol, or really were they serpent people? And that's something that I have yet to answer for myself. So I'm going to end this right here. You've got a good idea. Again, Nicholas Roerich exposes Agni Yoga, and coming from the area of where these Nagas were at. These water Nagas, I guess they were water Nagas, and uses that name Agni in his Agni Yoga. So pulling, again, the invisible people that all of these occultists are talking to and getting the direction from, or the invisible Nagas, translated through the Buddhas or the intermediate monks, is all coming from that same source. That's it. Thank you.